The day of my brother's wedding, I caught my husband and my future sister-in-law sharing a moment of secret passion in a dark corner. But instead of making a scene right then and there, I joined forces with my brother to turn that day of celebration into a stage for unforgettable revelations, making them lose everything in a matter of hours. How could a groom betrayed by his own fiancée maintain such composure? My story may seem unbelievable to many, but it's the bitter, raw truth I had to live through. It was a sunny day. The five-star hotel in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, was adorned with luxurious white satin ribbons and fresh flowers. Dazzling crystal chandeliers lit up everything, making it sparkle like a fairy tale scene. Soft music and words of blessing filled the air. Today was the big day for my brother Julian and my future sister-in-law Eliza. As the groom's sister, Simone, I couldn't hide my happiness and pride. Standing in a corner of the ballroom, I smiled, watching my brother in his impeccable tuxedo. His handsome face was radiant with joy. Julian is 5 years my senior, and since we were kids, he's always looked out for me and protected me. After our parents passed away prematurely, he was a father, a friend, my whole world. Seeing that he had found a lifelong refuge with a woman as beautiful and sweet as Eliza filled my heart with endless warmth. Eliza had a delicate, fragile appearance. She spoke softly and always looked at my brother with admiration. Throughout their engagement, she treated me like a true sister. I thought our small family was finally complete and that I too had found my own happiness. My husband, Miles, an accomplished architect, stood by my side, his arm around my waist. In my eyes and everyone else's, he was the perfect man. We had been married for 5 years and had a relationship that was the envy of all. He was always tender and attentive, my rock through every storm. He gently squeezed my hand and whispered in my ear, "Your brother looks amazing today, and your sister-in-law is a dream. They're a match made in heaven." I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder, feeling that familiar calm. "Yeah," I replied, "I hope they're as happy as we are." I sincerely believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had a brother who adored me, a wonderful husband, and soon a charming sister-in-law. I was living in that bubble of rose-colored happiness until, just a few minutes later, I burst it with my own two hands. The ceremony was about to begin. Suddenly, I realized my husband had disappeared a while ago. I wanted to take a picture with the couple before they walked onto the stage. I looked around but didn't see his familiar figure. I thought maybe he'd stepped out to take a call, so I walked alone toward the end of the hall where a small balcony overlooked the hotel's back garden. It was a quiet spot, so I figured he might be there. As I got closer, I heard whispers mixed with a woman's giggle. That voice was far too familiar. I slowed my steps, and my heart suddenly began to beat a little faster. Through the gap in the open glass door leading to the balcony, I saw a scene that chilled my blood. My husband, Miles, was there, and the woman he was holding in his arms, kissing her passionately, was none other than the bride of the day, Eliza, my future sister-in-law. She still wore her pristine wedding dress, but now she looked incredibly repugnant and hypocritical. Time seemed to stop. My ears went deaf. All sounds around me vanished, and I could only hear the sound of my heart shattering. I leaned heavily against the cold wall to keep from collapsing. A knot tightened in my throat, and a wave of nausea rose in my chest. And then their conversation reached my ears. Every word was like a sharp knife, ruthlessly stabbing the last piece of hope I had left. "You are so daring, honey. Meeting here right now?" Eliza's voice was flirtatious. Her hands were still wrapped around Miles' neck. Miles scoffed, a laugh I'd never heard from him, full of arrogance and disdain. "What are you scared of? Nobody would suspect a thing. Look at that fool's family, busy like puppets. And his brother, Julian, he's nothing but a lovesick idiot. We've got everything under control." That fool referred to me. Lovesick idiot referred to my brother. I clenched my fists tight, my nails dug into my flesh, but I didn't feel the pain. "Still, I'm a little nervous," Eliza continued, "and if everything gets exposed later? Besides, I don't like the idea of living with you and your wife." Miles laughed again, this time with contempt. "You don't have to be jealous of that girl. I only married her for the label, daughter of a respectable, established family to fool the world. She's nothing more than a baby-making machine, my shield. As soon as she gives me a kid, I'll find a way to get rid of her. Soon, all of Julian's fortune will be ours. And then you can have whatever you want, my love. My love. Those two words struck me like lightning. I couldn't take it anymore. My world, my beliefs, 5 years of love, it had all shattered. In an instant, I turned around and started walking like an automaton. I didn't know where I was going. Tears fell relentlessly, but I lacked the courage to cry out loud. I only felt disgust, a deep, profound disgust. Stumbling along, my mind blank, I bumped into someone. Lifting my head, I saw a figure through my tear-blurred vision. It was my brother, the groom of the day. Simone, what is it? Did something happen? Julian, seeing my wretched state, slightly furrowed his handsome brow. I couldn't hold back anymore. I wrapped my arms around him and burst into sobs. Through choked-back cries, I told him everything I'd just seen and heard. I expected him to fly into rage, to run to that balcony and smash everything, to call off the wedding immediately. But he just listened in silence, gently patting my back with his large hand. When I stopped crying, he gently pulled me away and looked me straight in the eyes. There was neither surprise nor anger on his face, only a terrifying calm. He carefully wiped away my tears, and then he winked at me, a significant gesture that only we as siblings understood. He whispered a sentence in my ear that I will never forget in my life. It's okay. The main act is about to begin. Julian's words hit my ears like a thunderbolt, leaving me so stunned I even forgot to cry. The main act? In such a critical situation when my dear brother was being betrayed on his wedding day by his fiancée and my husband, how could he say something like that with such calmness? My mind was in chaos. I thought maybe the shock had been so great that he had gone mad. Seeing me still standing there dazed, Julian said nothing more. He simply took my hand firmly and led me toward the end of the hall, where the groom's waiting room was. He looked around cautiously, and only after ensuring no one was present, he pushed me inside and locked the door. The room was decorated with white ribbons and balloons, but the air inside was heavy and tense, almost suffocating. Simone, listen to me closely. Julian turned and looked me straight in the eyes. His expression was no longer of terrifying calm. It was the seriousness and cold determination I only saw when he made major business decisions. I froze once more. A long time ago? How? How was that possible?
Julian sighed and pulled up a chair for me to sit in. It was 3 months ago, he began to recount. I started noticing something wasn't right. That woman, Eliza, showed excessive interest in the management of the company, frequently asking about projects or the financial situation, details a fiancé wouldn't normally worry about in such detail. And your husband, Miles, acted with an abnormal familiarity toward her. Subtle eye exchanges, little gestures, things only those involved would notice. I felt a knot in my chest. Well, I was blinded by happiness. My brother had silently detected the dangerous undercurrents. I had a bad feeling, he continued, so I secretly hired a private investigator, and what they discovered was much more terrible than I had imagined. It wasn't simply infidelity, Simone. Behind everything was a meticulously calculated conspiracy. Julian opened his phone and showed me several photos and documents. There were photos of Miles and Eliza on secret dates in luxury spots. There were also bank statements showing large sums of money transferred from an unidentified account to Eliza's. And what horrified me the most was a detailed plan found in Miles's emails. The plan was organized in phases. First, Eliza would seduce my brother with her beauty and false sweetness to marry him and officially become part of our family. At the same time, Miles, as my husband, would use my trust to gradually leak internal company information. Their ultimate goal was that after the wedding, Eliza would convince Julian to entrust Miles with the management of several major projects. That way, they could conspire to divert company funds, create phantom debts, and eventually bankrupt the company our parents left us, seizing everything for themselves. My blood ran cold. My 5 years of marriage, the love I had nurtured, had all been simply a move in their plan. Miles didn't love me. He had only used me as a pawn and a tool to carry out their dirty conspiracy. Romantic betrayal now turned into deep-seated hatred. Not only had they trampled on my feelings, but they had also tried to destroy our parents' life's work. So why? Why did you go ahead with this wedding knowing everything? I asked, looking up at my brother. My voice trembled. Julian looked at me and a sharp glint crossed his eyes. If I had broken off the engagement, then we would have only caught two small fish, Miles and Eliza. The one pulling the strings from the shadows would never have been revealed. Besides, we didn't have enough concrete evidence to expose the entire conspiracy. My brother decided to turn the wedding itself into a trap, a grand stage where everyone could witness the performance together. Julian squeezed my hand. I have everything ready, Simone. The company's important assets have been transferred to a secure trust. The projects they're interested in are just worthless phantom projects, and I've installed recorders and cameras everywhere. We just have to wait for them to expose themselves. I looked at my brother, feeling pity and admiration at the same time. He had endured all this alone, planning and counterattacking, while I remained happily oblivious in my false rose-colored world. Now I need you. Julian's voice became more serious than ever. Your appearance, the fact that you discovered the truth at this moment, is a variable they didn't expect, but it will become our ace in the hole. Miles and Eliza will only see you as a poor wife, heartbroken by the betrayal. They will never suspect you right now. Keep playing that role. Keep crying. Pretend to be utterly broken. The more miserable you look, the better you can perform. I quickly wiped away my tears. The pain still burned in my chest, but it had now transformed into the flames of hatred. My brother was right. This was no time to be weak. I wasn't just crying over my husband's betrayal. I had to fight for the justice of our entire family. I can do it, I nodded, my voice much firmer. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Julian, it's time for the ceremony to begin. It was the voice of the event coordinator. Julian stood up and adjusted his bow tie. He looked at me and smiled, a smile full of confidence. Good little sister, let's go out. The show is about to start. Remember, you're not alone. Your brother is here. My brother opened the door and we went out together. Reaching the lobby, we saw Miles and Eliza talking cheerfully with some guests, arm in arm. Seeing Julian and me, Miles quickly approached with his usual look of concern. Simone, where were you? I've been looking for you everywhere. I looked up at him, my eyes were still puffy from crying. I said nothing, just shook my head and moved closer to my brother. Miles looked a little disconcerted by my coldness, but he probably thought it was just exhaustion. The music in the wedding hall suddenly became more solemn. The master of ceremonies announced in a powerful voice, "And now, let's welcome today's protagonists," with warm applause, the groom, Mr. Julian, and the bride, Miss Eliza. All the lights focused on them, and all eyes were filled with admiration. And as my brother, the groom, took the hand of that woman, the woman who almost became my sister-in-law, to enter the hall, I smiled. My smile was probably the most perfect lie of my life, but it was also the smile that foreshadowed the storm to come. Under the dazzling stage lights, my brother and Eliza looked like a perfect couple. Julian still wore a happy smile, but I knew that was just part of a flawless performance. She pretended to be shy and sweet, occasionally casting him loving glances. She was an exceptional actress. They walked together down an aisle covered in white roses amidst the incessant applause of hundreds of guests. I sat in the front row of the family section, with Miles beside me. He still had his arm around my shoulders, whispering sweet words to me now and then. Aren't they lovely? I hope we celebrate a wedding anniversary this grand too. I simply leaned on his shoulder in silence, pretending to be swept away by the romantic atmosphere of the ceremony. But in reality, I struggled to suppress the nausea rising in my throat. Every word and action of his now felt disgusting. His hand on my shoulder, the same hand that once caressed me tenderly, was the very hand that had embraced another woman just minutes earlier. The ceremony proceeded according to the usual protocol. The master of ceremonies, with his sugary voice, praised the predestined love story and the meeting of two souls. Hearing it, I almost burst out laughing. Fate? Yes, a destiny woven with conspiracies and calculations. After the empty speeches, the moment for exchanging rings finally arrived. An adorable little flower girl dressed in immaculate white climbed onto the stage with the wedding rings in a red velvet box. Julian and Eliza looked at each other, ready to exchange their symbols of love. "Hold up!" Suddenly, a voice from the audience broke the sacred moment. The entire hall held its breath, and all eyes turned toward the person who had just spoken. It was a middle-aged woman. Her attire was quite elegant, but her face was filled with anger and pain. She was accompanied by an older man.
Probably her husband. I saw Eliza on stage flinch slightly, and her face paled for an instant. My brother remained calm, as if he had anticipated this woman's appearance. "Excuse me, who are you? What is happening?" The master of ceremonies tried to control the situation. The woman didn't reply, but walked straight onto the stage and planted herself in front of Eliza. "Eliza, do you recognize me?" she said, her voice mixed with anger and disappointment. Eliza took a step back, her face so pale it was devoid of color. "Oh, Mrs. Peterson, how are you here?" "Why shouldn't I be here?" The woman scoffed bitterly. "I came to see how my future daughter-in-law, the one who swore eternal love to my son, is about to become another man's wife. I came to seek justice for my son, Elijah." A murmur began to spread among the guests. Future daughter-in-law, son, what was going on? Miles, sitting next to me, was also surprised. "What's happening, Simone? Who is that woman?" he asked me. I just shook my head, pretending to be equally surprised and confused. The woman turned to the guests and raised her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting this happy day, but there is something I must say. This young woman on the stage, Eliza, was my son's fiancée. They loved each other for 5 years, celebrated their engagement, and were just waiting for the wedding date. But in just a few months, she changed her mind and ran off with a richer man, leaving my son in terrible pain." Finishing her statement, she pulled a bundle of photos from her purse and tossed them onto the stage. Photos of Eliza with another man, in affectionate poses, were scattered along with pictures from her engagement party. A collective gasp echoed throughout the hall. Now all eyes on the bride were no longer ones of admiration, but of curiosity, doubt, and reproach. Eliza stood frozen on the stage, her face white as paper. She tried to explain, stammering, "No, that's not it. That person and I broke up a long time ago. We broke up." "What nerve! Now you lie," the woman scoffed again. "Just 3 months ago, you took money from my son for shopping and investments. You deceived him and used him. How can you betray him like this now?" Eliza couldn't say anything and looked at Julian with pleading eyes, but my brother, the groom, the one who should be the angriest, simply crossed his arms and looked at her with an unfamiliar coldness and distance. I, sitting below, watched the performance in silence. I knew this was the first act my brother had prepared. He had found the ex-fiancée abandoned by Eliza and had invited his mother here. He wanted to rip off Eliza's mask of innocence and purity in front of everyone. Seeing the situation spinning out of her control, Eliza suddenly clutched her chest, swayed, and collapsed on the stage, feigning a faint. "Oh my goodness, the bride has fainted," some cried out. Eliza's hired family members rushed onto the stage, creating a chaotic scene. In the midst of everything, Julian slowly approached and looked down at the fainted Eliza. He showed no concern, instead flashing a slight smile. He took the microphone from the stunned master of ceremonies. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for showing you such an unpleasant performance, but I believe the truth must always come to light." He looked at Eliza, who was peeking at the reaction of the crowd. "You act very well, Miss Eliza, but I think it's time to end this farce." His words were like a bucket of cold water for everyone. Eliza, surprised, quickly closed her eyes, but it was already too late. Everyone had seen her.
And to make this show even more interesting, Julian continued, I would like to invite another special guest onto the stage, someone who is very much connected to this deception. He looked toward where Miles and I were, and my heart began to beat faster. I knew it was our turn to take the stage. The stage lights suddenly pointed directly at Miles and me, making us the center of all eyes. Hundreds of curious and surprised eyes focused on the family section. Miles was stunned, not understanding what was happening. He turned to me and whispered confusedly, "Who is your brother calling a special guest?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him with eyes full of tears, wearing an innocent, helpless appearance. I knew it was my turn to act. On the stage, Julian continued, raising his voice. This time, he addressed my husband directly. The person I want to invite is none other than my brother-in-law, the architect, Miles. Would you please come up here and share this joy with us? This sudden invitation caused even more commotion in the hall. People didn't understand why the groom was calling his brother-in-law onto the stage at such a delicate moment. Miles was completely paralyzed. He looked at me, then at the stage, and his face paled. He probably started sensing that something was terribly wrong, but given the public invitation from his brother-in-law and the gaze of hundreds of people, he couldn't refuse. "Go on up, darling," I said softly, giving him a gentle push on the back. In an innocent tone, I added, "Perhaps Julian wants you to share the secret of a happy marriage." My words were like a needle prick, but enough to make Miles flinch. He swallowed hard and, forcing a smile, slowly stood up and walked toward the stage. Each of his steps seemed to weigh a ton. When Miles got on the stage, Julian put an affectionate arm around his shoulders and addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think my brother-in-law is handsome and talented? I am very proud to have a brother-in-law like him. Not only is he a talented architect, but also a wonderful husband who deeply loves my sister." Julian's praise confused Miles even more. He could only smile awkwardly without saying anything. "And perhaps he's so perfect that not only does my sister love him, but other women love him. Isn't that right, my dear bride?" Julian turned toward Eliza, who was still sprawled on the floor, pretending to be unconscious. But hearing this, I saw her eyelids slightly tremble. Miles's face was now white as paper. He started sweating coldly and tried to slip out of Julian's grasp. Brother-in-law, what are you saying? Everyone is misunderstanding things."
Misunderstanding? Julian burst out laughing, a laugh devoid of any warmth. "Well, let me show everyone what the misunderstanding is." Finishing his statement, Julian signaled the technical team. The two enormous LED screens on either side of the stage, which had originally shown romantic photos of the couple, suddenly turned off and then flickered back on. But this time, the image that appeared was not of roses or candles. It was a video recorded from a hidden angle on the balcony. The whole hall held its breath. The scene that I myself had to witness barely an hour earlier unfolded vividly before the eyes of hundreds of people. My husband, Miles, passionately embracing and kissing the bride, Eliza, dressed in her immaculate wedding gown. The sound was also recorded with great clarity. Every one of their disgusting words echoed throughout the hall. "That fool is busy like a puppet, and Julian is nothing but a lovesick idiot. I only married her to fool the world. She's nothing more than a baby-making machine." The entire hall seemed to explode. Cries, insults, and looks of contempt fell ruthlessly upon the two people on the stage. The sordid drama of adultery and betrayal was being projected in the most vivid way possible. Eliza could no longer continue faking her faint. She jumped up, pale and trembling from head to toe. Miles could barely stand. He staggered back a few steps and, pointing at the screen, stammered, "No, it's not true. It's edited. It's a setup." But his weak words couldn't silence the crowd's anger. "Garbage! What a pair of adulterers! I can't believe it!" Insults erupted everywhere. Eliza's fake family couldn't keep up the act either. They stood paralyzed, their faces flushed with shame, not knowing what to do. And I still sat in the front row. Tears began to flow again. This time, it wasn't an act. They were tears of pain from having to relive that scene and hear those venomous words again in front of so many people.
I covered my face with my hands. My shoulders shook. I had to project the image of the miserable victim, the wife completely shattered by the cruel truth. On the stage, Julian looked at me, and a flash of compassion crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by cold determination. He approached and snatched the microphone from the master of ceremonies' hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted. His voice had an invisible force that instantly silenced the chaotic hall. "Did everyone see that? This is the true face of the woman I was going to marry and the man I once considered my brother-in-law, part of my family." He turned toward Miles and Eliza. His gaze was like two knives. "Do you two have anything else to say, or would you like me to show you something even more interesting?" Miles and Eliza, desperate, could only shake their heads. They were completely cornered, with no way to excuse themselves. "But all this," Julian continued, and his voice became even more mysterious and terrifying, "doesn't end here. This drama of infidelity is actually just the tip of a much larger iceberg." The entire hall fell silent again. Everyone wondered what the groom meant. Julian pulled a bundle of documents from the pocket of his tuxedo and held it up for everyone to see. What they really wanted wasn't love, was this. What was that bundle of documents, and what connection did it have to the person Julian said was pulling the strings from the shadows? All eyes were fixed on the bundle of papers in my brother's hand, waiting for an even more terrible truth to be revealed. The bundle of documents in Julian's hand was like a mysterious object that captured everyone's attention in the hall. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see which direction this performance would take. Miles and Eliza also looked up, and in their desperate eyes, terror was now reflected. They probably knew better than anyone what those papers contained. "Before I tell you what this is," Julian said in a slow, clear voice, "I'd like to tell you a short story. The story of a cunning old fox who used two skunks to steal from a chicken coop." He scanned the hall with his gaze, casting a piercing look at some of the guests seated in the VIP section. I noticed a middle-aged man with a stocky face and dressed in an elegant gray suit suddenly tense. He coughed lightly and adjusted his tie. "The fox," Julian continued, "knew the chicken coop was very well protected, so he didn't dare act alone. That's why he found two skunks, a male skunk and a female skunk. He promised them a life of abundance, food, and warm clothes. They just had to help him carry out a plan. The female skunk had the mission of seducing the head rooster, the future owner of the coop. The male skunk had the mission of courting the head rooster's sister, a naive chicken, to become part of the family." Hearing this, I no longer needed to act. Tears streamed down for real. My brother's metaphorical story was like another knife twisting in my pain. I was that naive chicken. Their ultimate goal, Julian's voice became even colder, was that after gaining their trust, they would slowly open the doors and break the fences so that the old fox outside could quietly enter and seize the entire chicken coop. "Not a perfect plan, you two skunks." He looked directly at Miles and Eliza. "Does this story sound familiar?" Miles and Eliza couldn't say anything, only lowered their heads. "And this, which I hold in my hands," Julian raised the bundle of documents, "is the detailed plan and the map that the old fox drew for the two skunks, the map that tells them which path to take and where to break the fence. This is the complete plan to seize the company, our parents' life's work." He flipped through the documents one by one, projecting their content directly on the large screen. Figures, charts, and dirty corporate strategies appeared clearly. Their plan wasn't limited to diverting company funds. It included creating false scandals, undermining Julian's credibility, and fostering internal divisions to finally create the conditions for a competitor to acquire the company at a bargain price. And the name of that competing company was also written clearly: the Golden Crest Group. The entire hall murmured again. The Golden Crest Group was not an unknown name in the business world. It was an emerging force that had risen quickly with bold and controversial moves. And the man in the gray suit who had displayed strange behavior earlier was none other than the president of the Golden Crest Group, Mr. Harrison. Now all eyes turned toward him.
Mr. Harrison paled, but he tried to maintain his composure. He stood up, fixed his clothes, and tried to leave the hall. Mr. Harrison, where are you going in such a hurry? Julian's voice was like an invisible rope that tied his ankles. The best part is yet to come. You wouldn't want to miss it. Mr. Harrison turned around and forced an awkward business smile. President Julian, I believe there is a misunderstanding. I have nothing to do with your company's internal affairs. Nothing to do? Julian laughed coldly. Then how do you explain your secret meetings with these two people, and the money you sent to Miss Eliza so she could pose as a rich girl, and the promise of a project director position to Mr. Miles if everything went well? Every question from Julian was a powerful blow that left Mr. Harrison barely able to stand. He knew my brother wasn't talking just to talk. He had all the proof in his hand. Just then, two men in civil clothing, who looked like police detectives, slowly approached Mr. Harrison's table. They said nothing, only stared at him with solemn eyes. Mr. Harrison realized that all his escape routes were blocked. He slumped into his chair, his forehead soaked with sweat. The empire he had meticulously constructed was about to end. The old fox had finally been cornered.
I, sitting below, watched everything. My heart was no longer filled with personal pain, but with anger at the vileness and cruelty of the business world. For profit, they were capable of trampling everything: love, family ties, even human decency. My husband, Miles, whom I once loved madly, was nothing more than a pawn on someone else's chessboard. He had sold his soul for a vain promise. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was no longer brazenness, but emptiness and extreme despair. He had lost everything: love, honor, and his future as well. On the stage, Julian, after exposing the entire conspiracy, turned toward me. He walked in my direction without saying anything and silently extended his hand. I took his hand and we went up to the stage together. He took the microphone, and his voice was no longer sharp, but softened with a touch of compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, the person most hurt in this story is not me, but my sister, Simone. This girl has had to endure the deception and betrayal of the man she deeply loved. She is completely innocent. He turned toward me and with a look full of love said, "Simone, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I should have realized it sooner. I should have protected you better." I just shook my head, and the tears flowed again. But this time, they were tears of emotion and gratitude. "Today's wedding," Julian continued, "will not have a bride, but the party will continue. I hope all our distinguished guests stay and consider this a celebration of the truth." The entire hall erupted in applause. They weren't applauding for a wedding, but for the courage and the victory of justice. When I thought everything was over, a sharp scream erupted from the bride, who was slumped on the floor. Eliza jumped up, tore a sharp hairpin from her hairstyle, and with a crazed look lunged at me. "It's your fault. Everything is your fault." Eliza's crazed action was so fast and sudden that it stunned everyone. The hairpin, gleaming under the stage lights, flew toward me like a poisoned arrow. I froze, my mind blank. I realized the imminent danger, but I couldn't react. Julian, beside me, also didn't have time to intervene. When the tip of the hairpin was just a few inches from my face, a shadow darted out from behind like lightning. It was none other than Miles. He put his entire body in front of me. The sharp tip of the hairpin grazed his shoulder, leaving a patch of red blood on his white shirt. "Ah!" Miles cried out in pain, staggering backward. Eliza seemed surprised by her own action and by Miles's reaction. She dropped the hairpin and stood there dazed, her face pale. It was then that the hotel security guards rushed over to restrain her and carried her away. The hall plunged into chaos again. Julian ran to help Miles. "Are you okay?" Miles, his face contorted with pain, shook his head. He didn't look at Julian, but at me. His gaze was very complex. There was regret, pain, and somehow a kind of relief. "Simone, are you okay?" I looked at the stain of blood on his shoulder, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Why had he done it? How could the man who had mercilessly deceived and used me risk his life to protect me? Or was this another performance, an attempt to gain my last ounce of compassion? "Take him to the infirmary immediately," Julian ordered the hotel staff. As Miles was being led away, the two police detectives also took Mr. Harrison. The president of the Golden Crest Group no longer looked imposing. He was just a defeated old man, walking with his head bowed amid people's accusations and contempt. The wedding farce had finally come to an end. Julian took the microphone again and tried to calm the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I apologize for the unexpected incident. Our party will have to end here. On behalf of the family, I sincerely thank you all for your attendance." The guests began to leave one by one, taking with them an unforgettable story. What had been a splendid wedding hall now looked desolate and cold, like a ruin. Julian and I stood in the empty space in silence. Extreme exhaustion washed over us. "It's all over, Simone." Julian gave me a gentle pat on the shoulder. I nodded, but a big question still lingered in my mind. "Brother, how did you know everything? The company acquisition plan, Mr. Harrison's role, how did you know?" Julian looked at me and gave a sad smile. "Because I wasn't the only one who wanted to expose him. My brother told me another story, a story that had been hidden for years. Before he passed away, our father was a close friend and business partner of Mr. Harrison. Together, they laid the first bricks of both companies. But it was that same Mr. Harrison who used dirty tricks to deceive our father into taking all his shares and driving him to bankruptcy. That blow caused our father to fall ill, and soon after, his health deteriorated and he passed away. I always had doubts about our father's death." Julian's voice became heavier. "After inheriting the company, I began to investigate in secret, and little by little I found evidence of his crimes. But he was too cunning and cleverly hid all the traces. I never had enough proof to sink him. Until Eliza appeared." My brother continued. "At first, I was also fooled by her innocent appearance, but I realized there were too many coincidences. She always casually mentioned projects the Golden Crest Group was competing with us on. So I had her investigated and discovered the connection between her and Mr. Harrison. I realized he was trying to repeat the same script with me as he did with my father, and I decided this was my opportunity to avenge our father." Hearing this, I felt a knot in my chest. Behind the company's success, my brother had carried such a heavy burden of vengeance. He had to live a lie, act with the woman he was going to marry, waiting for the day he could take down his enemy. "Then everything was in your plan?" "Most of it, yes," Julian nodded, "except for one thing. I didn't know your husband was also part of his plan, much less that you would be the fuse for all of this. Your appearance, your courage, was the unexpected variable, the decisive blow that made him fall without having time to react." Julian, beside me, looked at me with pride. "My little sister, you've truly grown up." I managed a smile through my tears. We had won together, as siblings. We had won. A little later, a hotel employee came to inform us that Miles had received first aid. The wound wasn't deep, but he had to go to the hospital for a tetanus shot and a more thorough checkup. He said he wanted to talk to me alone for a moment before leaving. I hesitated a bit, but finally nodded. In the end, I wanted to know if there was any sincerity left in him. I entered the infirmary. Miles was sitting on a gurney with his shoulder bandaged. He looked disheveled. His designer suit was wrinkled and discarded, his shirt stained with blood, and his face lacked all vitality. Seeing me, he lifted his head with a look full of guilt. I'm sorry, Simone." "What good is an apology now?" I asked coldly.
"I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, lowering his head. "I just wanted to tell you one thing. The moment I jumped to protect you was sincere. It wasn't an act." I looked at him in silence. "For the past 5 years," he continued in a hoarse voice, "I've lived a lie. I approached you because of Mr. Harrison's plan for the money, but then I started feeling something real for you. Your sweetness, your kindness moved my heart, but I was already too deep. I couldn't turn back. I wanted you, and I also wanted the money and the status.
Greed clouded my reason. He looked up at me, and tears began to well up. Today, facing the danger, I realized the only thing I wanted to protect was you, but it's already too late for everything. I listened to his late confession without feeling any emotion in my heart. Love. Perhaps there was some, but the betrayal and the damage he caused had killed that love. "Save those words for the judge," I said in an expressionless voice. "Between us, everything is over." I turned around and left, leaving him alone with his regret and his late tears. The moment the infirmary door closed, the door to my 5 years of marriage officially closed forever, too. A week after the stormy wedding, everything began to gradually calm down, but the aftermath was still enormous. The case of the Golden Crest Group became a scandal that shook the business world. Mr. Harrison, Eliza, and several other high-ranking executives were arrested and investigated for fraud, misappropriation, and industrial espionage. Despite his act of saving me, Miles couldn't escape his involvement. As a key piece of the plan, he was summoned to testify and faced the inevitable justice. I filed for divorce, and the entire process was carried out quickly and without dispute. We decided to sell our house, the only valuable common asset. I didn't want to keep anything that reminded me of a past full of lies. After everything was resolved, I felt I needed some time for myself. I decided to take a trip alone, go somewhere far away to clear my mind and start a new life. I chose the Bahamas, a place of calm, quiet enough to heal my wounds. During my days in the Bahamas, I didn't visit many places. I simply spent my time walking along the beach, sitting in small, charming cafes, reading and writing. After so many storms, I realized that what I truly needed was peace of mind. And one cool afternoon, while I was sitting in a wooden cafe overlooking the sea, sketching ideas for a new company project, a familiar voice sounded next to me. "Hello, what a small world." I looked up and was surprised. It was the police detective who had handled my case that day. His sudden appearance disconcerted me a little. He no longer wore his strict uniform, but a comfortable khaki jacket and jeans. He looked much younger and more approachable. The afternoon breeze from the Bahamas gently ruffled his thick, dark hair. "Hello," I smiled, trying to hide my surprise. "What a coincidence to find you here. Are you on vacation?" "You could almost say so," he replied. A gentle smile revealed a slight dimple. "I was transferred here a few weeks ago. You could say I'm starting a new life." He looked at my notebook and pen. "You're working. Sorry to interrupt." No, I had just finished." I hurried to close the notebook. Then he hesitated a little. "Would you mind if I sit here for a moment? The cafe is very full, and this is the only free spot." I looked around, and indeed, the small, lovely cafe was full of people. "Yes, of course. Please sit down." He pulled up a chair and sat across from me, ordering a hot latte. There was a slightly awkward silence between us. I didn't know what to say, and he also seemed to be searching for a suitable topic of conversation. "At the wedding that day," he finally broke the silence, "I saw everything. You were very brave." His words surprised me a little. I thought he had only come to handle the case, and I was surprised that he had noticed other things. "Thank you. Fortunately, everything has passed." "I'm Damien," he introduced himself suddenly. "Simone," I replied. "Nice to meet you, Damien." We started talking. At first, it was just light conversation about the Bahamas, work, and personal hobbies, but little by little, the conversation became deeper. Damien told me why he had been transferred. After years of working in the stressful environment of New York City, he felt exhausted and wanted to live and work somewhere quieter. He loved the mountains, the forests, and the clean air of the island. I also shared my story, not the painful details of the betrayal, but my decision to leave the city and my desire to find a new balance in life. We realized we had something in common. Both of us were on a journey to find a new beginning. Damien was a very engaging person to talk to. He was intelligent and funny, but there was something quiet and deep in his eyes, characteristic of someone who has lived a lot. Talking to him made me feel very comfortable, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. The sky began to darken, and the warm yellow lights of the cafe came on, creating a very romantic atmosphere. I don't know how long we were talking. "It's late now," Damien said, looking at his watch. I have to get back to the station. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Simone. Likewise, I smiled. This weekend. I'm planning a hike in the mountains, and I was wondering if you're not busy, would you like to come? His invitation made my heart skip a beat. Hiking? I've never done that. All the reason you should try it. He smiled. The air there is incredible. It helps release all the stress. I thought about it for a moment and then nodded. Yes, I'd love to. After that casual encounter, Damien and I had our first date. We hiked in the mountains together, wandered through expansive pine forests, and discovered small restaurants hidden in the alleys. With Damien by my side, I was no longer the woman who had to be strong, the one who had to distrust everyone. He gave me a strange sense of security and peace. He didn't ask me about my past or make me relive painful memories. He simply stayed by my side in silence, sharing the small joys of life with me. The feelings between us grew naturally and smoothly. One night, as we were sitting by the tranquil water, watching the calm lake reflect the moonlight, Damien suddenly took my hand. Simone, his voice was deep and warm. I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to stir up old wounds. I just want to tell you that if you allow me, I would like to be the person who writes a new chapter of your life with you, a chapter full of joy and happiness. I looked into his sincere eyes, and my heart was moved. The tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of happiness. I didn't say anything. I simply nodded and squeezed his warm hand tightly. 2 years later, Mommy, hurry up! Gaddy and Uncle Julian are waiting outside. My little daughter Skylar's cheerful voice sounded from the door. I smiled and adjusted the bow in her hair. Mommy's coming, my princess.
I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the image of a woman radiant with happiness. Today was a special day. It was my first wedding anniversary with Damien, and also the day the whole family was going to Atlanta for the inauguration of a new branch of the company. My life had completely changed. After that fateful trip to the Bahamas, I found the true love and happiness of my life. Damien, after we dated for a while, decided to request a transfer back to Atlanta to be by my side. He said that wherever I was, that's where his peace would be. We held a small, warm wedding on the beach with only our dearest loved ones. My brother Julian also found his own happiness after all the storms. He fell in love with a kind teacher, and they recently had their first child, a healthy boy. The company, under Julian's direction, and with my support, grew spectacularly, becoming one of the leading companies in its sector. As the car drove down the familiar highway, Skylar sat in my lap, chattering and pointing at everything she saw out the window. Damien, in the driver's seat, turned around occasionally to look at me and the little girl with a gaze full of love. When the car passed a large prison, I suddenly fell silent. I knew people were inside paying for their mistakes. I had heard that Miles was going to receive a sentence reduction soon for his good behavior. I also heard that Eliza had suffered a genuine mental collapse and had been transferred to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. And Mr. Harrison, old and sick, finally broke down behind bars. I no longer hated them. My heart was now full of peace. All the hatred had been left behind, and love and forgiveness had taken its place. The inauguration party was a great success. Amid the bustling atmosphere, I received a beautiful bouquet of white roses with no sender's name. Inside was a small card with the shaky handwriting of an older person. Congratulations. May you be very happy. I knew someone, somewhere, was probably watching me and sincerely wishing me the best. That night, after the party, when Skylar was sleeping soundly, Damien and I stayed on the hotel balcony, contemplating the bright lights of Atlanta at night. He hugged me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered, "for coming into my life, for giving meaning to my days." I smiled, turned around, and rested my head on his firm chest. I should be more grateful. Thank you for healing all the wounds inside me. We hugged in silence, fully feeling the happiness of the present. Life truly is like a long journey with countless unpredictable forks in the road. There were moments when I thought I had fallen into the abyss of despair, but it was in the darkest place that I found the light of my life. A new beginning, a new happiness. Everything was here, in my arms.
After the trip to Atlanta, we returned to our quiet routine. Our small house was filled again with Skylar's laughter and the warmth of family. My brother Julian also came over often on weekends with his wife and son. Seeing my daughter and my nephew play together, I felt my heart fully healing. The past seemed very distant, just an old story I occasionally recalled. I simply considered the anonymous bouquet of white roses and the card from the inauguration day as a late apology from a relative of Miles. I didn't want to think about it or give it more importance. I put the card in a corner of a drawer and locked it, as if closing an old chapter of my life. But life is not always as calm as a lake. The first ripples began to form so subtly that at first I thought it was just my oversensitivity due to everything I had been through. Sometimes, while driving down the street, I had the feeling that a familiar black car was following me, but when I looked closer in the rearview mirror, the car disappeared into the traffic. Once, while playing with Skylar in a park near our home, I felt a fixed gaze on me and my daughter from a distant bench. It was a middle-aged woman dressed very elegantly with a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses that covered part of her face. When I looked at her again, she immediately turned her head and hurried out of the park. When I told Damien about this, he simply laughed and hugged me. "You're overthinking again. You're a successful, beautiful executive now. It's normal for some admirer to look at you." But I knew my husband said this to reassure me. His police instinct kept him silently on alert too. "I'll check the security cameras around the house. It never hurts to be cautious," he added. That incident soon faded into oblivion too, until Skylar's second birthday. The party was intimate, at home, just Julian's family, us, and a few close friends. While everyone was cheerfully singing happy birthday, the doorbell suddenly rang. Damien went to open it and came back with a beautifully wrapped gift box in his hand, but his expression was a little strange. "It's from a messenger service," he said. "It's a gift for Skylar, but it doesn't list the sender's name." We were all surprised. I took the gift box, and a vague uneasiness came over me. The box was wrapped in high-quality gift paper, tied with an elaborate pink satin ribbon. Clearly, the sender had put a lot of effort into it. "Maybe it's from some business partner who appreciates you," Julian guessed. I thought so too. It was probably a business gift. I opened the box carefully under everyone's curious gaze. Inside, resting on soft velvet, was a small, beautiful white gold bracelet crafted with great delicacy. The bracelet's pendant was a finely carved lotus flower with a small diamond in the center that glittered under the light. It was a very valuable gift, but what froze me was not its value, but the small card that accompanied it. The handwriting was soft, elegant, and very familiar. I opened the card with trembling hands, and inside was a single short line. "Happy birthday to our little girl from her grandmother." Our little girl, from her grandmother. The word grandmother was like a bolt of lightning striking my mind. Who? Who was the grandmother? My mother, Carla, had passed away years ago in a terrible car accident. I myself saw the photo of her funeral, and Julian and I held her burial. There could be no mistake. So who was this woman? A distant relative I didn't know? Or a much more terrible secret I had no idea about? I looked at my little daughter. Skylar was still laughing and chattering innocently. Completely oblivious to the storm silently gathering around her, I felt a knot in my chest. I wouldn't let anyone hurt my daughter. I had to uncover the truth. Whoever that mysterious woman was, whatever her purpose, I had to find her. The quiet life I had worked so hard to achieve seemed to be facing a new storm again, a storm blowing from the very past I thought I knew so well. The mysterious birthday gift completely broke the joyous atmosphere of the party. After all the guests left, only Julian's family and ours remained at home. My brother examined the bracelet, his face as serious as mine. "This is not a simple matter," he said softly. "A custom-made baby bracelet like this in white gold with a diamond must cost thousands of dollars. This person is not an ordinary person." My sister-in-law, a wise and delicate woman, also spoke. "Could it be someone from your ex-husband's family, Simone? Maybe they're trying to get close to the child that way." It's impossible. I firmly shook my head. They have no motive to do so. And more importantly, this calligraphy is not theirs. Damien remained silent for a while in thought and finally spoke with the seriousness of a police officer. The first thing we have to do is trace the origin of this gift. I'll take the box and wrapping to the crime lab. Maybe fingerprints or other clues can be found. And I'll review all the security cameras on the streets near our house today to trace the messenger service vehicle. Julian nodded in agreement. Right. I'll also use my contacts to ask major jewelers if anyone recognizes this bracelet design. The lotus design is quite unique. It's likely a personalized commission. Our conversation reached a stalemate. Although we considered several hypotheses, none could explain the appearance of this woman who called herself grandmother. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I held my little daughter close, contemplating her sleeping face. An invisible fear enveloped me. Who was that woman? What did she want from my daughter? Did she have bad intentions? The following days passed in a state of anxiety and worry. Damien and Julian did everything they could to investigate, but all the clues seemed to lead to a dead end. The messenger service was a small company, and the sender had paid in cash and used a fake name. The security cameras only showed an ordinary messenger, nothing special. No jeweler recognized the bracelet design. The mysterious woman seemed to have calculated everything meticulously, leaving no trace. Seeing that the investigation was stalled, I felt even more anxious. I decided I couldn't keep waiting passively. I had to find the answers myself. I decided to start with my past, with what I knew about my mother, Carla. I requested a few days of vacation, left Skylar with my mother-in-law, and went back alone to my parents' old house in the town where Julian and I grew up. It had been a long time since I'd been back. The house was still the same, covered by the dust of time, but every corner evoked warm memories of my mother. I started cleaning the attic where my mother kept old objects and family memories. I hoped to find among those seemingly insignificant objects some clue about the mysterious woman, some secret my mother never told us. I flipped through the pages of the old albums one by one. Black and white photos, faded color photos. My mother, beautiful and radiant in her youth. My parents, happy on their wedding day. And photos of Julian and me as children, smiling innocently in their parents' arms. I went through them over and over, but I didn't see any woman who looked luxurious and unknown. When I was about to give up, my hand stumbled upon a small wooden box hidden in the bottom of an old trunk. The box was closed with a small rusty padlock. After struggling for a good while, I managed to open it. Inside were no jewels or money, but a bundle of yellowed letters, carefully tied with a purple ribbon. I picked up the bundle of letters with trembling hands. The handwriting was neither my mother's nor my father's. It was a woman's soft, elegant handwriting, identical to the handwriting on Skylar's birthday card. My heart felt like it stopped. I quickly opened the first letter. Dearest Sister Carla, it has been 1 year since that fateful day. I still can't forget how you saved me from that exploding car. I don't know how I can repay this favor in my entire life. I'm sending you a small gift. Please accept it. I know you will refuse, but please don't. Consider it a small token from me for the 2 children you have at home. Now I must leave. I can't stay in this place that has taken everything from me. Perhaps someday, when everything calms down, we will see each other again. With all my love, Adele. I reread the letter several times, my mind a mess. Sister Carla. That was undoubtedly my mother. Carla, a car accident, a savior. My mother had never told us that story. And Adele? Who was that woman? Why was she writing to my mother? I quickly read the following letters. They were letters sent from abroad, from Paris and Geneva. Adele told my mother about her new life, her loneliness, the torment of having to leave her home. She always asked about Julian and me and always sent us expensive gifts, gifts that my mother probably never told us about. The last letter was dated about 5 years ago, and the calligraphy was a little shakier. Dearest Sister Carla, I think I don't have much time left. This illness has tormented me for too long. My only regret is never having returned to care for my 2 children. I know I don't deserve it. I abandoned them. But please, sister, love them for me. Tell them that wherever she is, their mother will always be watching over them and loving them. I'm sending you this key. It's the key to a personal safe deposit box at a Swiss bank in Geneva. Inside is all the fortune I have amassed. Please give it to my children when they are older. Consider it the final compensation from a sinful mother. Goodbye, my sister, my friend, and my savior. The letter fell from my hands. My whole body was shaking. Children, mother, the entire truth, an unbelievable truth, was slowly revealing itself before my eyes. This woman, Adele, she was... No, it couldn't be. My mother was Carla, and she was dead. There had to be a mistake. But this bundle of letters, and this small key, and the familiar handwriting... I sat there stunned in the middle of the dusty attic, my mind full of confusion. The past I knew, the identity I believed in, everything suddenly felt blurred and strange. An enormous family secret, a secret buried for more than 20 years, was about to be opened, and it was directly related to me. That night, I couldn't sleep for a single minute. Adele's bundle of letters and the small key lay silently on the desk, but my mind was a whirlwind. Her mother, 2 children, those phrases repeated over and over, stabbing deeply into my heart. I tried to dismiss the crazy idea that Julian and I were not the biological children of the woman we always called Mom, but everything fit together in a terrifying way. The handwriting, the expensive gifts, and the appellation of grandmother for Skylar. The next morning, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to find Julian. He had to know too. He was my brother, my only family. He had the right to know the truth about our roots. I hurriedly drove back to the city. I went directly to my brother's office. Seeing my haggard appearance and sunken eyes, he questioned me anxiously. I said nothing. I simply closed the door of the office in silence and placed the bundle of letters and the key on his desk. I said, "Read it." Julian, surprised, picked up the first letter. As he read, his expression changed from surprise to astonishment and then shock. He read every letter, and the hand holding the paper began to tremble. When he finished the last letter, he collapsed into his chair, staring into space with lost eyes. "No, it can't be," he murmured, shaking his head over and over. "Our mother is Carla. Who is this Adele?" "I thought so too," I said bitterly. "But brother, look at this handwriting. It's identical to the one on Skylar's birthday card." I showed him the photo of the card I had taken with my phone. Julian stared intently at both handwritings. The last shred of doubt in his eyes vanished. He covered his face with his hands, and his broad shoulders trembled. For the first time in my life, I saw my always strong and firm brother so fragile and powerless. We sat in silence for a long time, each lost in our own confused thoughts. The past we knew, the mother we loved. Everything had suddenly turned into a big question mark. Then Mom Carla, Julian lifted his head, his voice, wasn't our biological mother. She raised us. She loved us. Why did she hide this from us? I don't know, I shook my head. But I think she had her reasons. Adele said she had to leave, that she couldn't stay. Something terrible must have happened. Car accident. That clue came back to my mind. Adele said Mom Carla saved her. Yes, the secret must be in that car accident. Simone, I looked my brother directly in the eyes. We have to uncover the truth, not just for us, but for both of our mothers. Julian nodded. His gaze became much more determined. You're right. We have to find out exactly what happened 25 years ago. Our investigation began with the vague clues from the letters, the car accident, the date, and the name Adele. Thanks to Julian's social position and Damien's police contacts, it wasn't too difficult to reopen the old case files covered in the dust of time. A few days later, we got the accident report. It was a terrible crash in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
A luxury car lost control and plunged down a cliff, exploding. According to the report, 4 people were in the car: the president of Rivas Jewels and his wife, and the driver and his wife. It was concluded that all 4 had perished. Rivas Jewels. That name left Julian and me stunned. It was an empire that once dominated the American jewelry industry, but mysteriously collapsed shortly after its president's death. Wait a minute, Julian said. Rivas. I remember. Our father worked at Rivas before founding the company. He was the chief financial officer there. Another coincidence. Everything seemed to be connected, but the report said all 4 died. Then who is Adele and why did she say Mom Carla saved her? I asked, confused. That's the key, Damien, who was sitting with us, intervened. He pointed to a section of the autopsy report. Of the 4 bodies found, 1 was so burned that it was unrecognizable. Based on some bone fragments, they could only confirm it was a woman, and people assumed it was the wife of the Rivas president, Mrs. Adele. That means, I held my breath, it's very likely that woman was not Mrs. Adele. Damien concluded. Mrs. Adele survived the accident, and it's possible the person who saved her was our mother, Carla. But for some reason, she chose to become a dead person in everyone's eyes and live another life abroad. But why? Why would a woman with status, money, and everything else abandon everything, even her 2 children? This accident, Julian mused, was it really an accident or an assassination? My brother's question silenced the room. If it was an assassination, who was the mastermind, and why did Adele have to flee? At that moment, Damien's phone rang. It was an old colleague from New York. He stepped out to answer and came back with a very serious expression. New news, he said. I asked them to check the list of Rivas Jewels executives from that time. Guess who was appointed acting president right after the death of President Rivas and his wife? Who? Julian and I asked in unison. It was him. Damien's voice became firm. The president of the Golden Crest Group, Mr. Harrison. That name appeared once more. Our family's old enemy, the man who drove our father to death. A wave of nausea and anger rose in my throat. This can't be a coincidence, Julian slammed the table. Harrison, our father, Rivas Jewels, and that car accident, there has to be a connection. A dark and terrible picture began to take shape, a conspiracy hidden for 25 years, a crime that not only claimed several lives, but also shattered a family. And now, by chance, we seem to be approaching the heart of that secret. The search for our roots had unexpectedly turned into the pursuit of the truth of a serial murder case, and the most likely suspect was our family's arch-enemy. The name Mr. Harrison was like the key that opened a dark door to the terrible secrets of the past. All the events now came together in a terrifying hypothesis. Mr. Harrison had not only driven our father to death to seize the company, but it's very likely 25 years ago, he was behind that terrible accident to devour the entire Rivas Jewels empire. If that's true, Julian gritted his teeth, he's not human, he's a demon. But all of this is just conjecture for now, Damien said, trying to maintain the calm of a legal professional. We don't have concrete evidence to charge him. The case is too old, and it's likely that almost all traces have been erased. And Adele, I intervened. If she's alive, she's the most important witness. She will know exactly what happened. But why did she flee? Why didn't she come forward to report it? She was probably afraid. The enemy was too powerful. She had to worry not just for herself, but also for her 2 children. Perhaps becoming a dead person was the only way to protect us. I felt a knot in my chest. My biological mother's departure was not abandonment, but a silent sacrifice. She had to give up everything for the safety of her 2 children, living in solitude and torment in a foreign country. And our mother, Carla, who raised us, was also part of that sacrifice. She lived her whole life with that secret guarded in her heart. What do we do now? I asked, looking alternately at Damien and Julian.
Go to Geneva to look for Adele. No, Damien and Julian opposed almost in unison. It's too dangerous, Damien explained.
Mr. Harrison is an old fox. His information network is everywhere. If he finds out we're investigating, he won't hesitate to use any means to silence us, as he did with your father. Furthermore, we're not sure Adele wants to see us. The last letter was written 5 years ago, and no one knows what situation she is in now. Damien is right, Julian continued. What we have to do now is look for evidence here first. The key to the safe deposit box is the most important clue. It's highly probable that the fortune Mom Adele left behind doesn't just contain money, but also something that can expose Mr. Harrison's crimes. But that's a Swiss bank in Geneva, I said worriedly. Their banking secrecy laws are the strictest in the world. Even if we have the key, I don't think we can just go and open it ourselves. Leave it to me, Julian said with a determined look. I have a lawyer friend specializing in international law. I'll ask him to find a solution. It might take time, but it's not impossible. While Julian handled the Geneva matter, Damien and I decided to start from another angle, searching for old witnesses who worked at Rivas Jewels at the time of the accident. 25 years is a long time, but surely there were still people who knew what happened, people who had to remain silent due to Mr. Harrison's oppression, bribery, or threats. Our search was very difficult. Many people had moved, many had passed away. Those who remained, when the names Rivas Jewels and Mr. Harrison were mentioned, all shook their heads in fear and refused to speak. Mr. Harrison's power and cruelty had created a shadow so great that it had oppressed them for decades. After several days of desperate searching, we finally had a stroke of luck. We found Mr. Jenkins, the former retired chauffeur for President Rivas's family. He was now a fragile old man, living alone in a small house on the outskirts. When we arrived, he was sitting on his porch, looking into the distance with sad eyes. At first, he also refused to speak, but when I showed him the photo of Adele and told him my identity, his old eyes filled with tears. "Miss, are you Miss Simone?" he asked in a trembling voice. When I nodded, Mr. Jenkins burst into tears. "My God, she's alive! I I thought the entire president's family." He invited us into his house. After calming down, he began to tell the story from 25 years ago, a story he had kept in his heart like a nightmare. "The day of the accident," Mr. Jenkins said in a trembling voice, "I was supposed to drive that car, but that morning the then Vice President, Mr. Harrison, suddenly sent me to another state with an errand. He said it was urgent and sent another driver in my place. It was a young guy who had just started. I didn't know him well. When I heard the news of the accident, I felt something wasn't right." He continued, "That car was the president's. I checked it every day. It was impossible for the brakes to fail. I tried to tell the police, but no one believed me. They said I was rambling from grief. And a few days later, Mr. Harrison sent someone to give me a large sum of money and threatened me that if I kept talking, my family wouldn't be safe. Out of fear for my children," Mr. Jenkins lowered his head, his voice full of regret, "I had to keep quiet. I accepted the money and left the job. For these 25 years, I haven't slept a single night in peace. Remorse and guilt have tormented me constantly." Mr. Jenkins's testimony was living proof that the accident was not a coincidence, but a meticulously planned conspiracy. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Jenkins added, was not only cruel, but also very distrustful. He always had a small tape recorder installed in the president's office to monitor all his conversations. Once I saw him by chance secretly changing the batteries. A flash of lightning crossed my mind. A tape recorder. If it was still there, it was highly likely to have recorded important conversations, evidence that could expose Mr. Harrison's crimes. But where is that office? Rivas Jewels no longer exists. Its former headquarters must now be owned by another company. When we felt lost, Mr. Jenkins provided us with another valuable piece of information. After the president's death, Mr. Harrison sealed up his old office entirely. He said it was to preserve his memories, but I knew he was afraid that someone would find something inside. That room is still intact on the top floor of the old Rivas building. All the clues seemed to converge at one point, a room sealed for 25 years that could contain the black box of the entire case.
But how could we enter a place so heavily guarded by another corporation? The old Revis building was now called the Golden Crest Tower, standing in the center of the city like an impenetrable fortress. Infiltrating there, especially the sealed room on the top floor, was an almost impossible mission for ordinary people like us. This can't be done through normal channels, Damien said after circling the building. The security system here is state of the art. There are surveillance cameras everywhere and guards patrolling 24 hours. The access doors on each floor use magnetic key cards. It's impossible to enter through the main door. While we racked our brains, we finally received a call from Julian, who had been silent for several days, with important news. I talked to my lawyer friend, Julian said. He says that as biological children, we have the full right to request information about our mother's safe deposit box at the Swiss bank, but the process is very complicated and will take at least a few months. But he did discover something interesting. 5 years ago, just when Mom Adele sent the last letter, someone else tried to access that safe deposit box but failed due to a lack of identification documents. Who? I asked anxiously. They were people working for Mr. Harrison. I felt a shiver. He also knew about the existence of that safe deposit box. He had been looking for it for years. This further confirmed to us that there was something inside that threatened him, and it also meant we didn't have much time left. If Mr. Harrison discovered we were investigating, he wouldn't hesitate to act first. The urgency of the situation forced us to make a bold decision. If we can't enter through the main door, I said, looking at Damien and Julian, we'll enter another way. The Golden Crest Tower and our tower are right next to each other. The height of both buildings' rooftops is almost the same. Don't tell me, Julian looked at me in astonishment. No, Simone, it's too dangerous. It's the only way, I said firmly. We don't have any more time. You can disable the security system of our tower. Damien has the technology and experience as a cop, and I have to go in there. That room is related to my past. After a long discussion, they both had to reluctantly agree. The plan was drawn up with great detail and caution. The time for action was set at 2 in the morning, when activity in both buildings completely ceases. That night, the city slept. Only the faint streetlights remained. When I stood on the rooftop of our tower with Damien, my heart was pounding like a drum. The wind from the heights vigorously whipped my hair. From here, the rooftop of the Golden Crest Tower seemed to be only about 15 feet away. It wasn't a great distance, but it was an abyss between life and death. Damien carefully prepared the equipment. He was an expert in these matters. He used a special gun to launch a high-strength cable to the railing of the building opposite. The cable was firmly anchored at both ends. "I'll go first," Damien said, in a deep, reassuring voice. "When I cross and secure the area, you slide across the rope. Don't be afraid. I'll hold you tight." I nodded. My palms were already damp with sweat. I held my breath as I watched Damien agilely hang onto the rope and cross the dark void. A few minutes later, he arrived safely on the other side and signaled me. It was my turn. I took a deep breath and firmly grasped the cold rope. My whole body was suspended in the night sky. Below, the city lights seemed distant, and a small mistake could make me fall. But the thought of my mother, of the truth waiting for me on the other side, gave me strength. When my feet touched the railing of the Golden Crest Tower, Damien hurried to help me. "You did it," he whispered proudly. We quickly disabled the rooftop cameras and found the way to the emergency stairs. The sealed office was right on the floor below. The old lock was no problem for Damien. The heavy door opened with a creak, revealing a space that had been steeped in darkness and dust for 25 years. We turned on a small flashlight, and the faint light swept across the room. Everything was as Mr. Jenkins had described. The desk, the bookshelf, the set of sofas, everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. The stale air smelled of time. According to Mr. Jenkins, the tape recorder was hidden behind a large oil painting hung on the wall. Damien carefully took down the painting.
Indeed, an old cassette recorder was cleverly installed in a small hollow in the wall. Will it still work? I asked worriedly. It's hard to tell, Damien replied, but let's take it with us anyway. While Damien dismantled the device, I started searching further. I intuitively felt there had to be something more in that room. The light of my flashlight swept over the bookshelf. Hundreds of old leather-bound books, mostly on management and law. Suddenly, I remembered a habit of my father. As a financial officer, he also always carried a small notebook where he wrote down the most important things, secrets he didn't want anyone to know. Would President Rivas have a similar habit? I started pulling out the books one by one, flipping through the pages quickly. And when I picked up a thick law book titled Justice and Truth, I noticed it felt strangely heavy. Opening it, my heart felt like it stopped. The inside of the book was hollowed out, leaving just enough space for a small black leather-bound notebook. I picked it up with trembling hands. This is it. It has to be it. Just at that moment, we heard footsteps and a faint murmur of voices from the hallway. Check the rooftop area carefully. I think I saw a suspicious shadow. My heart sank. We had been discovered. The building security guards were on patrol. The way back was blocked. We were trapped in this secret room. The footsteps in the hallway were getting closer. The light from the security team's flashlights filtered through the crack in the door, creating ghostly shadows in the dusty room. I felt a knot in my chest and a cold sweat ran down my back. If we were caught here with this evidence in hand, our entire plan would be ruined. We'd be charged with trespassing, and the notebook and recorder would never see the light of day. Damien signaled me to be silent. He quickly turned off the flashlight and dragged me behind an old, enormous filing cabinet. We held our breath, trying not to make the slightest noise. We heard the jingling of a key in the lock. My heart was about to burst. They're going to enter. This room has been sealed for a long time. Who would enter? One voice said. Better safe than sorry. Lately, the boss has asked us to monitor this area closely. The boss must have been someone belonging to Mr. Harrison. Even though so many years, he was still having this place watched. That further confirmed that he knew very well what was hidden in here. The lock clicked and the door opened with a creak. A dazzling beam of flashlight lights swept through the room. Damien and I almost stopped breathing, pressed against the cold filing cabinet. Fortunately, the cabinet was very large and we were hiding in the deepest corner. See? Nothing here, just dust and cobwebs, the first voice said again. Come on, let's check other places. They stayed at the door for a few more seconds. The light swept through the room again, and then the door slammed shut. We heard the lock close again, and the footsteps retreated. We were safe, at least for now. I let out a sigh of relief, feeling my strength fail. Damien signaled me to wait a little longer. About 10 minutes later, when we were sure the security team had moved away, he turned the small flashlight back on. We have to get out of here now, he whispered. The way we came is no longer safe. But how? The main door is locked and there are guards in the hallway. We were completely trapped. Damien's gaze swept across the room and stopped at a small ventilation window near the ceiling. It's the only way out. That window was very small and high up, barely enough for a person to pass. Furthermore, it faced the building's facade. Outside, there was only a narrow ledge running along the wall, barely a foot wide. It's too dangerous, I shook my head. It's the only option, Damien said firmly. Do you trust me? In this critical situation, his calmness and determination were my only support. I nodded. The notebook and the recorder were safely tucked into my crossbody bag over my chest. I took a deep breath, trying not to look down. My legs trembled as I placed my foot on the ledge. I felt my whole body cling to the cold wall. The wind whistled in my ears, bringing with it the noise of the nighttime city. Don't be afraid, look only at me. I heard Damien's voice from the front, a deep, calm, and reassuring voice. Just one step at a time. I concentrated on Damien's figure, trying not to think about the deep abyss below. Never had 30 feet seemed so long. When my hand finally touched the one Damien extended to me, I felt like I came back to life. We descended several floors on the emergency staircase and then found a way back to the main hallway. Fortunately, the security team was patrolling another area. We quickly returned to the rooftop and crossed back to our tower on the rope. When my feet touched the familiar ground, I collapsed, panting. The suffocating escape had finally ended. Back in the safety of my apartment, we didn't rest, but immediately began to examine what we had brought. Julian had also arrived and listened to our story with a worried expression. Damien carefully opened the old tape recorder. After tinkering with it for a while, he managed to make it work. We held our breath and sharpened our ears. The old cassette tape began to spin, emitting the noise of time. And then we heard a familiar voice, that of President Rivas, my biological father. He was talking on the phone. "I don't agree, Vice President Harrison. That project has too much risk. The fund flow is not transparent. I can't approve it." After a brief silence, his voice became sharper. "I've already told you, don't try to deceive me. I know what you're doing behind my back. If you don't stop, I'll reveal everything to the world." The call ended and my heart was pounding. This was proof of the conflict between my father and Mr. Harrison. But the next recording truly stunned us. This time it was Mr. Harrison's voice. He was talking to someone. "The old man has found out everything. We can't let him live. A car accident. Yes, it has to look like an accident. His family. Take care of everyone. Leave no one behind. And then Rivas will be ours." A confession recorded 25 years ago. An undeniable confession. At the same time, I opened the black leather-bound notebook. Inside, there were not only records of Rivas Jewels' business transactions, but also brief diary entries from my father. He wrote about his concern upon discovering Mr. Harrison's conspiracy, his unease at feeling monitored, and his infinite love for his wife and two small children. And on the last page, there was a line written hastily in a special ink, an ink visible only under ultraviolet light, a prudent habit of finance professionals. Julian and I knew it. We quickly turned off the lights, and Damien pointed a small ultraviolet flashlight, which he always carried with him, at the paper. The writing appeared. "All original evidence, contracts, account statements are in the safe deposit box at the Swiss bank in Geneva, number XYZ. The key has been entrusted to Carla. If anything happens to me, trust her. Carla will know what to do." Everything became clear. Mom Carla not only raised us, but was the trusted person my father entrusted with the mission of protecting the most important evidence, the inheritance, and the future of his two children. The love and sacrifice that both our mothers showed us were immense and grandiose. Tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of gratitude and pride. Now we had in our hands the confession of the past, the clue to the decisive evidence stored in Geneva, and Mr. Harrison's current crimes. The plan for the final counterattack, the decisive battle, was about to begin. The net of the sky had been woven tightly. All that was left was for the biggest fish to fall into it himself. With the irrefutable evidence in our hands, we knew the hour of final judgment was very near, but we were also aware that confronting a cunning old fox like Mr. Harrison required not acting rashly. A small mistake could give him the opportunity to turn the tables and erase all traces. "We need an absolutely perfect plan," Julian said with a firm expression. "We have to attack him by surprise, without giving him time to react." The plan was drawn up with the participation of all three of us. Julian, with his position in the business world, would strike the decisive blow in the commercial sphere. Damien, with the support of his trusted colleagues, would handle the legal aspect to leave him no escape, and I would confront him directly, becoming the fuse for the bomb that was about to explode. The first step was to resolve the Geneva matter. With the recording and the notebook as evidence and the cooperation of the police, Julian's lawyer friend quickly managed to convince the bank. They agreed to open the safe deposit box, but on the condition that I be present and the process be carried out under the supervision of both parties. 1 week later, Julian and I were in Geneva, Switzerland. The bank vault was cold and silent. When the familiar metal box was placed on the table, my heart pounded again. Mom Carla's key slipped smoothly into the lock, and with a turn, the door of the box opened with a click. Inside, there was no money or jewelry, but a thick bundle of documents carefully wrapped in plastic. They were all the original contracts, the bank statements recording the illicit money flows, and all the secret agreements Mr. Harrison used to seize Revis jewels. Every document bore his handwritten signature. This was the ultimate weapon, the final sword that could end that demon's career. With the lawyer present, we made copies of all the material and immediately sent them to Damien. Everything was ready. Upon our return to the States, the atmosphere was tense. Mr. Harrison, after the failed intrusion attempt at the Golden Crest Tower, seemed to have smelled the danger. He began to show defensive behavior. The number of his bodyguards doubled, and all his meetings were strictly controlled. He's trying to erase the traces and divert his assets, Damien reported in an emergency meeting. We have to act before it's too late. The D-Day was set. It was the day of the Golden Crest Group's annual shareholders meeting, a major event that brought together all the management, main shareholders, and media. It would be the perfect stage for us to end this performance. That morning, I chose a deep red dress, a color that symbolizes power and determination. Julian wore his usual elegant suit, but there was an unusually steely determination in his eyes. We attended not as competitors, but as guests of honor, a surprising move that Julian had prepared beforehand through some shareholders favorable to the company. The auditorium of the National Convention Center was packed. Mr. Harrison was seated at the presidency on the stage, still maintaining an expression of confidence and authority. He was giving a passionate speech about the Golden Crest Group's achievements and its ambitious future plans, a perfect speech from a competent leader. When his speech ended amid thunderous applause, Julian signaled me. "Now, excuse us." A voice resonated from the door. It was Damien entering in uniform along with an investigation team. "Mr. Ricardo Harrison, president of the Golden Crest Group, we are here to execute an emergency arrest and search warrant in connection with charges of organized murder and misappropriation of assets."
The entire hall was stunned, and all cameras instantly turned toward the stage. Mr. Harrison jumped up. His face changed, but he tried to maintain his composure. "What are you saying? There must be a mistake. I am an honest businessman." "There is no mistake, Mr. Harrison." I raised my voice as I walked from the audience. All eyes turned toward me again. "Or do you want me to remind you of the car accident that took place in the Blue Ridge Mountains 25 years ago?" Hearing this, the composure on his face completely crumbled. He looked at me, and there was hatred and astonishment in his eyes. Julian also stood up and walked onto the stage. He carried a bundle of documents in his hand. "And what he did to my father. The time has come for him to pay for all his crimes." Julian signaled the technical team, and on the giant screen behind Mr. Harrison, instead of growth charts, images of documents, contracts, and bank statements appeared. At the same time, the recording of Mr. Harrison's own voice ordering the elimination of the entire Revis family echoed throughout the hall. "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" Mr. Harrison roared like a wounded beast, running crazily toward the control panel. But it was too late. All the evidence had been revealed before hundreds of people, before the cameras of the entire country. Damien and his colleagues quickly approached and put him in handcuffs. "Ricardo Harrison, you are under arrest." The Golden Crest Group, built on the blood and tears of others, collapsed in an instant. Standing on the stage, I watched the enemy of two families being led away. I didn't feel triumph, but a strange light relief. Finally, justice had been served. "Mom, Dad, are you watching?"
We did it. In the midst of everything, a woman ran out of the crowd and knelt at my feet, crying inconsolably. It was Mr. Harrison's wife. "Miss Simone, please forgive my husband. He just had too much ambition." I looked at the poor woman in front of me and then looked out the window. The sky was still blue, the sun was still warm, and life would continue. But there are mistakes that can never be forgiven. The case of the Golden Crest Group's collapse caused a major commotion, not only in the business world, but throughout society. The crimes hidden for 25 years finally came to light. The media reported and analyzed Mr. Harrison's cruelty and cunning day after day. He went from being a successful entrepreneur, an example of overcoming adversity, to the embodiment of evil in an instant. With irrefutable evidence, Mr. Harrison was sentenced to the maximum penalty for his crimes. His accomplices, the subordinates who had helped him for years, were also brought to justice and received the punishment they deserved. After the trial, our lives gradually returned to normal. The company, after eliminating a dishonest competitor, experienced a spectacular development, becoming a company that was not only financially sound, but also respected for its business ethics. Julian, after avenging his father, seemed to have shed an enormous weight. He became more cheerful and open, and spent more time with his small family. As for Revis Jewels, as the sole legitimate heirs, Julian and I decided to not keep it. It was stained with too much blood and tears. We decided to sell all the group's assets, and a portion was used to compensate the victims and their families who had been harmed by Mr. Harrison's illegal practices. The rest went to create a charitable foundation called the Adele Carla Foundation, a foundation to help orphans and women in difficult situations. It was the best way to honor and thank our two great mothers. 1 year after the big case closed, I received a letter, not an email, but a handwritten letter from an address in France. The handwriting was much weaker, but I recognized it instantly. It was Mom Adele's handwriting. "My dear children, Julian and Simone, when you read this letter, Mom will be in a very distant place. From the explosion at the wedding to the final trial, Mom has seen everything. You were very brave and strong. Mom is very proud of you. I know you may never forgive the mother who abandoned you for decades, but I truly had no other option. The death of yesterday was the only way to protect you from that demon's clutches. I had to live with torment, longing, and guilt, but knowing that you were growing up safely under the love of my sister Carla made all my sacrifice worthwhile. Now that the wicked man has paid for his crimes, the heavy burden on my heart can finally be released. I believe I can now go in peace and reunite with my father. Be happy, my children. Live a truly meaningful life in the name of your mother and your father. I love you very much. Adele." Along with the letter was attached my mother's death certificate. She had passed away just days after Mr. Harrison's trial ended. Julian and I hugged and cried. They were tears of sadness, but also of understanding and peace. We could finally call her mom with peace in our hearts. My life, after so many storms, finally found a quiet harbor. Damien and I decided to hold a small, warm wedding in the Bahamas, where our love began. On the wedding day, instead of a lavish wedding dress, I chose an elegant silk dress in a soft, simple, and pure pink color. In my hand, instead of a bouquet, I firmly held the hand of Damien, the man who had accompanied me through the most difficult moments. Julian looked at me with a happy smile. His eyes shone with joy. Skylar, in a beautiful princess dress, scattered rose petals along the path we walked. In the midst of that warm atmosphere, we had a special guest. It was Mr. Jenkins, the former chauffeur. He brought us an old photo of my biological parents in a simple wooden frame as a small gift. "Miss, I wish you all the happiness," he said in a trembling voice. I accepted the gift with a heart full of emotion. The past was over, but the good memories and good feelings would endure forever. That afternoon, as the sun set, Damien and I stood side by side, contemplating the distant horizon.
A new chapter of life, a new life full of love and hope opened before us. I knew that from now on, no storm could knock me down, because by my side there will always be people who love me unconditionally. And I believe that somewhere above, my 3 parents and mothers are watching over us and blessing us with a smile.